Hi. So I just wanted to talk about honestly, one of my favourite wrestlers in the company, regardless of his form, and that's Wheeler Yuta. Now, I think Wheeler Yuta's entire run, the last, 2-3 years now? Ever since, just when he joined BCC, let's say that. The guy it's just been incredible to see. The guy's truly stepped up. The BCC was so perfect for the guy. And everything following that has been near enough perfect. I'll say why near enough in a minute. But, just to get out the way, the Moxley match, the one where, it's just a war between the two guys, is one of my favourite matches on AEW TV ever. I love it. I love what it gave birth to. I love everything about it. But after it, Yuta was just not just there, but you could see he was the youngest of the group, but he was still propelled up to a pedestal where he was valued. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of Yuta's role. And obviously, shock to any, the stuff with Brian during his retirement run with Yuta, I adored that. I really did. I thought that was really fun how they handled that. And then, see, my biggest problem with Wheeler Yuta is, I believe truly, they were designing Yuta to be one of their next big stars. I truly do. And that there's a problem with his heel work now. I think he's obviously going to be massive heel for them for the future, as long as they keep him as a heel. But you look back at the early Death Rider stuff, as soon as they, turned on Brian, that actively just ruined my mood, just thinking about that. There was clearly teasers of Yuta was not a part of it, then obviously did the deed. And then they were kind of still teasing, they still wanted to, get out the Death Riders, and there's always been constant things where Moxley would push his face, he'd walk out, he wouldn't want to be involved. But, they'd just get under his skin, so he'd do it. That was what they were hinting at. And I remember seeing a tweet ages ago, I forget who tweeted it and stuff, but it was Yuta was obviously, now with the hair, he was growing the hair out, and people were theorising, this tweet was saying, Yuta's growing his hair out, he's growing the beard out, he's going to get maroon gear when he turns face, and they're basically going to, saying he's designing to be the next Brian. And makes sense, he's basically Brian's protege. And I love that idea so much, because one, I think Yuta's a really good wrestler, especially technically. But also, I just feel like that's, for a babyface guy, I feel like Yuta now is such a big heel, but I feel like at the time, I think the moment's past now, unfortunately, I really do. But I feel like there's a time where it was so hot to turn him, and he would have been such a huge babyface. I'm talking honestly, main eventer, and I really mean that. That's how big of a babyface turn I really think it could have been. The guy's promos are still okay. They're not they're not as good as Brian's for me, obviously. But it's just, I think that's just because of his voice. I think he's got quite a naturally whiny voice. Garcia, compare him to Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia's got that voice where he's doing the whole tough guy New York sort of thing. You know what I mean? You can tell he's from that type of the world. Yuta's just, it's kind of whiny, and he can go in ring, but that could have, I don't know how to describe it. It's just something about Yuta with his voice that just didn't work for that presentation. But I feel like that worked for the, because of the softer voice, essentially. Kind of makes him more relatable as a babyface. I don't know. I feel like Yuta's so good at being extreme heel or extreme babyface, and I really think that's the sign of a true talented performer. I feel like with Yuta, I like what they're doing now. I will say that. I didn't for a while. I thought this was just getting wasted. They teased the turn 4 times. And I was like, okay, so when are we actually going to do it? And they just never did, which is whatever. I thought there was going to be something with Claudio, because he didn't want to team with Mox, because what he did, because at the time, you remember Brian's turn, but they turned on Brian. They held Yuta back. Yuta was crying. I remember the backstage promo after Brian got attacked by them the first time. And Brian goes, that's like a son to me, you know what I mean? And that's very, such a strong thing to say. Obviously makes the turn more tragic. And everything about it, I just feel like that was designed to propel Yuta on to a certain point, and it just hasn't really done that. Yeah, it's the turn obviously did, so you could argue that was the plan, but I just don't believe it was. I believe the plan was, let's get him in the Death Riders for a small period, and then he's going to go through them all and become one of our guys. And I'm upset that it didn't happen, because I like the guy, and I would love to see that. I think that would have been a great continuation, like a sort of epilogue in a way, but also a birth to a new story. But the fact that he's become so over as a heel, essentially, like, people love booing the guy. Like, it was AEW Dark in Cardiff, and it was Pac, Moxley, so everyone's cheering, even though they're heels, but Yuta still got booed out the building. And, like, that's just Yuta's thing. Everyone just hates him. It's like a Don Callis thing where he's just booed. Like, that's just commonly accepted. If you're a newcomer coming in, okay, what are the first things? You boo Wheeler Yuta. And, like, I kind of like that. That's, like, a long-lasting thing, because in a way that makes basically what he did to Brian, because that's why he's booed, is basically unfixable. It's unredeemable. It's set in stone. You can't do anything about it. And I kind of like that. I do like that aspect to it, because it's like, you've made your bed. You cannot escape this. You chose a choice that you probably regretted, but you can't undo it. It's your own fault. And he's just kind of owning it. I feel like there's definitely more story there. I feel like that's what my thing is. There's definitely more story with Yuta. And I feel like they dropped the ball a bit with it after a certain point. And it's like, okay, we're focusing on Moxley's downfall. I see, that's the thing. As much as I love the Moxley downfall, that Moxley's going to be kicked out the Death Riders, essentially, I feel like that was not the plan. And it's good. It's been really good. I'm never going to deny that. But I don't know. I just feel like this is the problem with, not problem, but yeah, basically a problem with AEW from last year. As much as I did enjoy last year, I don't think it was the greatest, but I enjoyed it enough. I think it was clearly some sort of flip-flopping in terms of stories. Okay, we're going to go down this avenue. Oh, what, we're not? Okay, we're doing this avenue. It felt very flippant. And I feel like Yuta was really affected by that, because I just don't think they planned him as a heel. It's a miracle that it worked out that way. But I feel like the guy is just, I think the plan was, because you got to remember, Brian being the world champ was a huge deal. And then the Moxley turn was massive, massive. And this is parallel with Swerve Hangman. So, like, they had two basic stories running on parallel. And then they teased, obviously, when Brian retired, the Yuta stuff was kind of getting built in more and more. You know, Yuta wouldn't team with them for a period. And then he'd come back after he retired, Brian. And then, like, you know, that was kind of it. But they still had small teasers after the bag. So it was like, okay, so are we doing this or not? And he kept going, oh, we might, oh, we might, oh, we might. And then they just never did. And in an honest sense, it's very, very WWE. And I hate saying that. It was very WWE at the time, though, with that specific circumstance. And what I mean by that is, with WWE, they'll literally just put two people on a screen with each other, and just to see if, like, people will cheer and go, oh, this could be cool. And then nothing happens. It's just to go, the eyeballs, like jingly keys, like, look at this, maybe. And it's just bullshit. It's like, well, there's no purpose in that. Here's an example. I remember when Kevin Owens returned. Not Kevin Owens. When CM Punk returned and Kevin Owens, like, they were backstage together. And he goes, clearly setting something up. And he's, what happened with that? Nothing. And you can go, yeah, Kevin Owens got injured. Who cares? They weren't going to do nothing. It's done. And it's like, I hate that kind of mentality, because they try and go, oh, they're planting seeds for the future. It's not. It's just it's basically, again, dangling keys, shining lights in your eyes. It's just going, maybe. And you go, oh, that was sick. I got to interact. We got two people's interactions. What was the interaction? There was zero interaction. And to tie this back to Yuta, it feels like there was more of a plan. I really do believe there was. I feel like there was a whole, okay, why don't we do this? And then they just went, no, we've got more stuff going on. We need to do it another time. It felt like it kept getting pushed back. And then they just went, no, we're not doing it. And then a few months later, they had the Moxley thing where he pushed them. They clearly had a row. And then they were just fine. And it's like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? It was just like, I'm very, like, for me, if you've not noticed, I'm very positive about AEW. I believe it needs the positivity, and I feel like it deserves the positivity. I will never lie about my feelings, though, and I do feel that was a big fumble by AEW, and as good as it's turned out, I will never deny the quality of what Wheeler Yuta's been doing. And I can't really sit here and go, oh, it's been great, but this is instead, just because of my opinion. I just feel like that, to me, would have intrigued me more. I feel like that was the original plan, and just, it never went anywhere. And like I said, I just don't think that was uncommon. at points in AEW. I feel like there was a lot of times where they just kind of got, wet feet, essentially, and got stuck, so they tried to just find any way out, to just kind of get past certain periods. And that's a discussion for another day. But with Yuta last year, I feel like that was a big thing that happened. And again, I'm not going to complain about Yuta's modern run. I think his modern stuff has been excellent. I feel like the one thing I wish they did is respected him a bit more. I feel like they kind of got back to it, but there was a point where Yuta was just weak. Like, there was no sugarcoating it. He was weak, but now he's being seen as a bit more of a threat. Not the biggest threat in the Death Riders, of course not, but like, he's seen more of a, more on his own feet. And that was the only thing I actively did dislike. I said, okay, so that's not good, because this guy you've kind of built up. You can't really just disregard what they've done in the past. You can't have Yuta stand toe-to-toe with Jon Moxley, basically bleed out, and then him still lose, but still gain the respect because it was that good of a performance, and then have him have banger matches after it, to then just go, oh no, but this guy's chicken shit. That doesn't make sense. And that was the only thing I didn't like. They made him look weak, and they have definitely progressed past that, and I'm really happy about that. One thing I wish they would have done in the Death Riders with Yuta is they clearly teased like him and Pac not getting on, and I've always thought that was interesting, regardless if that was to do with the face turn or what. I've always thought that could have been very, very cool. There was a match a while ago. It was a trios match. It was Garcia, Yuta, and Pac. It was only a few months. It was only like a few weeks or like months ago. And I thought we were going to get some tension. And I really thought that was going to reignite, because you very rarely get Pac and Yuta interacting. But when we did, ages ago, Pac was like, it was Claudio, Pac, and Yuta. And Pac, Yuta said something, Pac said something that he disagreed, and Pac went, do something about it then. Clearly aggravating the guy. Clearly, that's what I like about Pac, sidetrack, is Pac's just psychopath. Like, he'll just be crazy, he'll just look for a fight. He's like skittish. He's definitely calmed down recent months since his return, which I like. I like that new reinvention. But I like that beforehand he was just crazy. Everyone knows how crazy he was with the long hair, just basically only wearing the trunks. That was Pac. And he was clearly aggravating Yuta because he just seen him as weak. But then that kind of just, again, went nowhere. But I still think there's potential in that. This is the problem with just a lot of AEW stories for me. A lot of them didn't go, like, when they went west, we haven't really, went the perfect way. They still have potential to me. And, like, again, I'll talk about loads of other instances like this another time. But Yuta is a big one. I still feel like there is, and I feel like they will. I really do. I feel like they will not leave the Yuta stuff just... He's a heel now forever. I doubt it. No way. It's like, again, to use a WWE comparison, there's no way they keep the Dominic Mysterio heel for all his career. There's not. There's just like, it just feels like that now, but they never will. And with Yuta, the guy, like, I think people forget how over of a babyface the guy was, especially during the Bryan period, during his final year. Definitely was over. And yeah, I feel like there's something there. I feel like there is. And especially with Garcia turning, I thought that was going to become a thing of, okay, so they're not just pushing Moxley out, they're pushing Yuta out as well. I thought they were going to do that whole thing where, like, obviously when they were teasing Statlander too, they were teasing Statlander, I was thinking, okay, so to get Statlander to join as well, Marina will go. So it'll be a few of them gone, and it'll just be Claudio. That could have been, and with a whole new group of Death Riders, that could have been interesting. But they never, and it's fine, it's worked. I just feel, again, Wheeler Yuta's just, honestly, excellent wrestler. There's a lot of story potential with the guy, and I feel like that's my biggest problem is the guy is not lost in the shuffle, but because the Death Riders are so good and so prominent on AEW TV, it's a lot of, obviously, Moxley doing some of the stuff his career, same with Claudio. Marina's having a breakout, Pac's coming back, and Pac's just putting on bangers like it's nothing. Danny Garcia's getting more of a push than Yuta at this point, and that's kind of like my bit of an issue. They just feel like Yuta's just there to be like a sidekick to get booed, and then just in tag matches, it doesn't feel like Yuta's getting a lot of focus, but I think that'll change. I hope that'll change, and honestly, the guy kind of deserves that, because every time they've kind of just put the spotlight on him, in a sense, look at the BCC, it's worked. For me, it's worked. So, I don't know what avenue they go. I don't know when they go, but I feel like it's still there. I do. I don't think the potential there for the main event is there no more. I think that's gone. But I feel like the spotlight can still be put on Yuta, and you can kind of give him some sort of torch and just go. And I think that's a really, really big deal. And I hope they realize that themselves, honestly, because you can't have the main event be stale after a few years, and just, you got to shake things up. And Yuta's one of those guys where he's not on standby, but you can pull him out. You know what I mean? It's weird. I don't know how to describe that bit and articulate it correctly, but he's not sidelined, but you can pull him in. Just work a program around Yuta essentially, because I like the guy, and how as much as fun is booing him and everyone hating him, got to come to a point, you know what I mean? And hate to be the bearer of bad news, it has got to come to a point, but it does. And it hasn't come to me, but I just always think every time I see Yuta now, it's like, what could have been? You know what I mean? What could have been? So yeah, what's your opinion on Wheeler Yuta? Where do you think he ends up in the next year or so? And do you think they were going to turn him babyface during Bryan's retirement period? And honestly, do you think he'll turn face again in the next year? That's a good question.